From Alachua, Florida, I'm Amrita-Keli.
I'm Krishna Kishor.
And I'm Amrita. Welcome to Nectar Talks, from the heart of New Raman-Reti, the largest Hare Krishna community in North America.
And the home of thousands of Bhakti Yoga practitioners. In our ongoing series of live interviews, we explore a range of spiritual topics, introducing you to inspirational community members and guest speakers with diverse backgrounds and experience.
Like bees searching for nectar, we seek to extract pearls of wisdom from how they live their lives and the spiritual lessons they can impart to us and our listeners.
If you're seeking nectar, look no further. All right.
Let's get started.
Amrita, thank you. Hare Krishna, welcome to Nectar Talks. This is episode 17, and we're super excited to do this episode. It's actually my first episode as a co-host. Thank you very much to the wonderful team for embracing me, part of their Nectar Talk family. And you may be confused, who's interviewing who? We're all here kind of like together. But actually, we're taking this great opportunity to interview Amrita-Keli and Lila Kishor. They're a vibrant, very dynamic duo, a power couple who have a very interesting life and have inspired many around them. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Jai. And Kish, we're so excited to have you lead your first episode with us. Thanks again for joining the team.
I'm following you though.
How do you
All right. Well, welcome, guys.
We did a little bit of homework on you guys, did a little bit of research. So I'm just gonna give a quick little bio. Is that okay? Am I allowed to do that for you guys?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Let's see if I get anything
You
wrong.
can grade the bio at the end if you want.
Totally. I'm just gonna be like, she was born in Paraguay.
Make it more interesting.
So Lila Kishor, you grew up in Delhi, right? You grew up in Delhi and you moved to the US when you were 17.
Mm-hmm.
And Amrita-Keli, she's from the Panhandle, our own from Florida. And both of you met in Jacksonville, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Both of you met in the Krishna Club that actually I got the great privilege to be a part of the Krishna Club a couple times, I think. And both of you did services there. Also, you got married in 2013, so you've been together about 9 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I still going? Am I on a roll?
Yep.
On a roll?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. And
great, doing so good.
And you are the lucky parents of two beautiful children who I've had also the great pleasure of meeting. And Amrita, you studied anthropology and religion, right? You were a chaplain for about 7 years.
Yes, that's right.
And Lila Kishor, you were you are a computer engineer.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. How did I do?
A+, baby.
Yeah. And both of you are vibrant souls and very inspiring to many and to myself. So that's also part of the bio.
The feeling is
Thanks for that awesome introduction and bio, Kish. So I want to get started. Some of the milestones we identified for you are how you met, your upbringing, of course, your service through the Bhakti House, and then we would love to get into what your current life looks like. But tell us a little bit more about some of the details of your upbringing. Amrita-Keli, we did a whole episode already. So if you want to know the full-on details about Amrita and her hobbies and all that, go check out episode 1. So I'll start with you, Lila Kishor. Tell us a little bit about growing up in Delhi, what life was like for you over there, and your experience when you eventually moved to the US.
Yeah, so I grew up in Delhi. It was, life in like normal middle class family, nothing special. And I moved to US when I was 17. That was a hard transition. I did not have any family here. So coming here, I remember I couldn't even have, I got a debit card and I tried to use it at a Subway one time. And they were like, oh, this won't work. It's actually an ATM card. So since I was not 18, I couldn't even get a debit card. So I had an ATM card. So I had to get to the ATM to do. So there was a lot of things that like I had to transition into. There was a big cultural shock. It took me about a year to find some friends. It was hard to kind of get into. I came to Michigan, so the town was really small. So coming from like a big city in Delhi, where you have to find a way to not find someone and be in a secluded place. It was an easy where there were like a few thousand people. And when I first landed, the college hasn't started. So it was a big cultural shock, and then it took me a while to kind of get into the rhythm and finding some friends and people I could relate to, and that helped.
Right.
Well, culture shock also maybe because of the weather too, right?
Yeah, I saw snow for the first time in my life. I loved the snowfall. It's like, oh yes, I was really looking forward to it. But then that evening itself, I was done with it. Like I had like a mile walk from my bus stop to my apartment, and walking in snow for a mile, I was like, all right, I'm already done with it.
Oh my God, that's what you hear. The parents say, "I used to walk uphill both ways." Wow, thank you so much. And I'm gonna shift a little bit now to Amrita. I know that you did an episode with Amrita, but in this episode, I don't think we got to hear you expand a little bit about things from your youth and how they have shaped your life. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit of maybe what might have been unique, like during your upbringing, that you can say that has shaped you of who you are now.
Wow, I love that question. The first thing that comes to mind is that my parents loved the outdoors. Like we weren't allowed to go to theme parks. Basically, we went camping. Like, I mean, we weren't hardcore campers. We used a camper, but like car camping style. But that's what we did together. We took vacations in nature. I grew up spending a little part of the summer each year in the mountains in North Carolina. That's where my mom lives now. So now we're bringing our kids to the places where I grew up. It's like my second home. That really had a really big impact on me, I think. And I'm so grateful to my parents for that, because that's how we had fun, was outside. And when the other thing that comes to mind is my parents got divorced when I was 10, and my mom came out as a lesbian. And that was really hard for everyone. It was very hard for my mom too. And I think it was a huge lesson in becoming authentic. And from a very, very young age, from that time, I felt catalyzed to sort of search for like truth and authenticity, because if people are pretending to be something they're not because they feel pressured or they feel like they won't be accepted for who they are, then then sad things happen. So I feel like that was a lesson that I learned young. And
that must have been at a time where it wasn't as common that would happen, right? Because that was what, in the 90s, you're saying, when you were 10?
Yeah, that's so true. I was telling him like I lied for a while about like how I was getting to school, because I maintained like the facade that my parents were still together, because it was scary to have a gay parent. I remember when I met my future very close friend whose dad had just come out as gay, like around the same time. And it was like finding it was like finding, oh, it was a treasure. It was a treasure. It was so valuable. So yeah, there was a lot of things that came out of that lifelong learning.
So do you think, like, because like kind of shaping who you are, do you feel like that is kind of giving you a little bit more kind of like a callus of where you can just you're accepting and not care so much what other people think and just kind of be happy with what's happening in your life? I know that's like a loaded question. It's kind of like an assumption that I'm thinking. It was like, wow, if you went through the process during the 90s, accepting that, like, what did that shape for you to not right now?
I think that's a really powerful question. And I think when I was younger, it created a callus, but it wasn't a mature callus. So my attitude of like, I am who I am had sort of like some negativity behind it. There wasn't like a softness to it. I was a little bit more rebellious in that way. And, when I found out, obviously through conversations with schoolmates, that like, gay people go to hell. And I just said, well, then I don't believe in God. And I became like a really intense atheist. So that for a while, so that callus was immature. And I feel like it has taken a lot of time that Krishna has revealed sort of the tenderness of like grief underneath that, of, having to go through something really intense as a child, and has transformed it into over time that yes, I need to live my own life, and I need to do what's right for me in my search for truth. But I do that from a different place now, from I think a softer place.
And do you have siblings, Amrita?
I do. I have a sister, a biological sister, Erin. She's older. She lives in California. She's one of my best friends. I have a younger stepsister, Courtney, and she passed away 2 years ago from leukemia.
Wow.
She's our angel. And I have 2 stepbrothers from my dad's marriage.
Oh, nice. And what about you, Lila Kishor? Do you have siblings?
I have one younger brother.
Okay.
Awesome.
Did you get to give him knuckle sandwiches growing up, pick on him a little bit, give him some danda?
Yeah, we did fight a lot.
Nice. You guys still keep in touch?
Yeah, so he right now lives in Long Island, New York. So we don't get to see each other that often, but we're really close.
Oh, cool.
Right. Yeah, thank you for sharing those early catalysts, like you call them, into kind of looking inside and to your identity. It's interesting to hear how that started for you. Let's jump a little bit ahead and talk about how you guys eventually came to Krishna consciousness. Amrita-Keli, we know that you've been very much a resident of the Krishna house and have held some management positions there. Lila Kishor, tell us a little bit about how you joined, how you discovered the devotees, and what that was for you spiritually, based on your spiritual background from growing up in India.
Yeah, so one part of my upbringing was that I was really fortunate. My aunt, my Masi, my mom's sister, she lived in Vrindavan. So she moved to Vrindavan when she was in her 20s, so way before I was born. So growing up, like every month or so, we would take the bus ride from Delhi to Vrindavan. So like for the weekend, we would just spend in Vrindavan. So it was just
so amazing.
I know. Now I look back and what a blessing it was. At the moment, obviously I didn't realize, a 10-year-old being able to walk, in the gullies of the Vrindavan, and being like where the Brijvasis really knew us, because we would be coming and staying in our aunt's bhajan kuti. It was like this really small room, and we'll my brother and I will sleep on the floor, and so it was really a blessing. And
now, did you come from a Vaishnava background to begin with?
Not really. So my family is what you would call like the Delhi, like Punjabis.
Okay.
Yeah, so growing up, like my dad's side of the family, they would go to the Sikh temple. So that was kind of their religious background or tradition, and they followed this impersonalist philosophy called Radha Swami,
Okay.
which basically focuses a lot on the Paramatma realization.
Okay.
When you follow the four regulated principles, you get initiated, you get this mantra that you meditate on, and then the focus is kind of, finding God within. So that's kind of the philosophy. So that's what I really grew up with and kind of gravitated towards growing up. However, there was always what really I found was missing. So they would have these Sunday satsangs. So I would go to the satsangs and I would really like hear attentively. And they will always like, oh, today we'll be talking about what God looks like, or what is God like, that who do you need to meditate on, or who that one is that you need to meditate on. And anytime that part came, and I would listen really carefully, but there was no description. They're like, that God is one and you need to find him. And I'm like, well, that's not that's not helping a 10-year-old.
Right.
And so that question just always stayed with me. I did go to the Krishna Balram Mandir, and the bridge was called, like, go to the Angrez Mandir. So I would go to there when I would go to Vrindavan. So I met the devotees at that time. So that was the first time, I met the devotees was in Vrindavan.
But you went to your wife's mandir.
So at that time, I that was the first encounter, but I didn't think much of the devotees at that time. Like, I didn't really ask any questions or anything like that. So fast forward, I was going to grad school at UNF in Jacksonville, and I was coming from a class and I heard kirtan, the chanting of the kirtan. And I was just amazed, hearing kirtan at an American campus, like, where's that coming from? So I just kind of followed the sound where it was coming from. And I kept walking, and there was this monk on harmonium, Krishna Kripa Prabhu, chanting.
Nice.
And so I was really intrigued. And so I asked him, like, what his name was. He's like, my name is Krishna Kripa. And I didn't connect the dots. I had been to the Krishna Balaram Mandir, but I didn't connect the dots at the time. And I was just amazed, like, here was an American body, like, following Vaishnav tradition. Like, what was that about? So I asked him a few questions. And at the time, there was a UNF Krishna Club event every Thursday. So he invited me to that. He said, it's every Thursday. And I remember it was right around this time, actually. It was the week before Thanksgiving. And so I told him, and he said, it's this Thursday. And I was like, I already have plans for Thanksgiving, but I'm definitely going to come the Thursday after.
And he just got some brownie points for remembering that, didn't you?
Totally.
sorry for interrupting. So then you said you were gonna go to it.
So yeah, so I was gonna go to it, and at the time there was a friend of mine. She was also really looking for something spiritual, so I thought, oh, this will be a good fit, and I'll take her to this Krishna Club meeting. So that Thursday I went, and Amrita-Keli did the yoga class, and Dinabandhu Prabhu led the discussion on Bhagavad Gita. And I found it really, really helpful. And I wanted to be with like people like that. At that time, I was looking for, hanging out with people who are more spiritual. So I was like, oh, this is a perfect place to hang out with.
Which Dinabandhu?
In Gainesville, Dinabandhu Prabhu.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Dinabandhu Prabhu from Gainesville.
Yeah.
So I started talking to him, became good friends with him, and that's how I really started to started associating with the devotees more. And then what really got me was the aspect of when, realizing, oh, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and what that one that I always wanted to know looks like, what are the pastimes. And that was just like, a whole new realm open for me. And then there was no looking back from there, right? So that was the attraction for me, was realizing that, even though, like, I went to the temples and I would see the deities or the murti of Krishna, but that it was like any other demigod at the time, right? Or any other murtis, and I didn't know the philosophy that well. So that was what really attracted me, and what worked for me.
Wow, you're so advanced. No, because like it's like who else is like I was walking on campus, I followed the sounds of the holy name, and then that's it. It's like.
Well, it is the mercy of the devotees, right? It's like where if it wasn't for devotees like Krishna Kripa Prabhu chanting, how would someone like me find this, right? It's like you think
so I'm
like
guessing. So yeah. No, sorry. No. You're thinking that. Well, go ahead.
So devotees like you, like I'm still shy of going on Harinams. That's one thing that I'm like still kind of getting out. But like here you are, like going on Harinams, and you find people like me who are looking things, who are looking out for spiritual life and are able to get connected that way. So yes, it's actually all because of blessings of devotees like you.
Yeah.
Which I think this kind of leads perfectly to the next question, which is, I'm guessing that's how you guys met, right?
I was gonna say we haven't had a couple on the show together for a while, so give us the beautiful love story. I'm sure it's gonna be great.
Okay, we'll pass it off to each other. But I remember the night he walked in like this. Because I think he was coming from the
He had
gym.
some swag.
But basically, he sincerely got sort of, there are students who come for prasadam, there are students who come for kirtan, there are students who are come because they like the discussions or the friendships. We're so open about Krishna Club being for everybody. And but it was obvious from the beginning that Lila Kishor wanted more. And one thing that manifested was he started coming to our ISKCON. So Dina Bandhu lived in Jacksonville at that time, and I had a very small women's ashram. It was just me and two other girls, and there was a couple of other devotees in town, I guess, and young Krishna clubbers, our Krishna Club president. So we would meet once every week, I think. So we'd meet at Krishna Club once a week, and then together outside of Krishna Club once a week, and we would plan ISKCON Jacksonville outreach. Like, what is our mission for Jacksonville? Nice. And so we started seeing each other on more of a just a different level. And he became friends with Dina Bandhu, and I have to admit that I was struggling because I called Kalakanta Prabhu at a certain point, and I was like, I think I'm in trouble. Because there's this.
You're having a hard time focusing on the ISKCON.
So there's this grad student coming around, and I think he's quite interested, and but I think I might have I'm feelings for him, and what do I do? And I'll never forget where I was standing and how he said it, but he said, treat him like a bhakta, not a boyfriend. And he was super firm. And I loved that, because what he said was that, you want to give him the opportunity to explore if Krishna consciousness is what he really wants in his life. And should you have anything to do with it, that will convolute everything. So so just be very strict, basically. Oh my God, I was so strict. It really freaked him out, I think,
All of a sudden you weren't so smiley anymore.
But after some time, he came to me and he said, I have something that I want to talk to you about personally. And I said, I'm not going to talk to you personally. And he said, I know that I wouldn't.
Yeah, she wouldn't meet me like one-on-one. One time I had to drop like flyers. She was like, you can drop it on top of my car. Like, I'm not gonna meet.
I was overcompensating.
How did that come off for you, Lila? How did you interpret that?
To actually, at first, my understanding was that because my only impression of the devotees was my aunt, who was celibate for life. She didn't get married and she moved to Vrindavan. So that's what I thought of Amrita-Keli, that she actually was, we're never getting married, and like she was devoting her life to the mission. And that's, that was my thing. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's a good conclusion.
But then, so that's what, like, at first, but then later, I don't know, like, in some discussion, I found out, you know, that like they were trying to find, or she was trying to find for a groom, or I don't know, somehow, like, you know, like these girls are trying to find their right husband. And then I was like, how does that work? I didn't think they'd get married. So, but then, like, yeah, it was really, I was like, this is too crazy. Like, even in India, no one does that, like, these days. Like, what is she like, where is she coming from? But at the same time, it kind of, you know, it was really, I really admired that. You know, it was really respectful that, you know, like, that she had these really strict boundaries to associate with, like, opposite gender. And coming from, like, a traditional Indian background, that was really admiring for me.
Great.
So then we had that but then he came to me and he told me, like, I have feelings for you. And then he said, I'm not ready to give up my job.
So even though she didn't want it, you were like, we're having this conversation, and you just boom.
No, well, he's no, sorry. There we go with that.
So I had to go, like, I had to really convince her to meet me, to have this conversation. I thought this, and I said, like, you know, this is important. Like, I need to meet you in person. So somehow she finally admitted to meet me, like, you know, in a public space.
It was the health food store,
right? And, you know, I told her that I have feelings for her, and I'm really, you know, I understand that, you know, where she's coming from, she's only going to associate or be with someone who's thinking of, like, a marriage goal, right? It's not just kind of, right. And that's, like, my goal. However, you know, that's not something that probably I see happening for another year, but I am, you know, looking forward for this relationship, thinking that it will go on that path, right? And so I was like, well, before I even go further, like, are the feelings mutual? Like, you know, or is this one side? And she's like, of course, like, and, you know, there was this, like, the smile, and, you know, like, her, she was all blushing, and she's like, yeah, they're mutual.
She's like, I've just been pretending. Wow. So then, you know, okay, you guys developed this relationship, and I know when I met you guys before you had children, then you had, like, a big house, and I heard that you continued to do service, like this program, kind of like a Krishna house in Jacksonville. Can you tell us a little bit about your services together, of how then, because then you guys just started kind of like doing it, right? Like running it apart from the Bhakti Club or Krishna Club, is that right?
Yeah, so it was Krishna Club, and it would meet every Thursday on campus. Dinabandhu Prabhu moved to Gainesville after some point.
He was really instrumental in the club getting started, and
right. So you know, he took the lead, and, you know, he did a lot for a year and a half or so, and then he moved to Gainesville, and then after that, Amrita-Keli and I, we would do the club on campus, and basically the program was, we would do kirtan, and then we would have a class from Bhagavad Gita and prasadam. So that was kind of, and yoga, a brief hatha yoga. So it was like an hour and a half to 2 hours program, but, like, students would just be hanging out till, like, 11 in the night. Like, we would come, it was really, like, there was a lot of students who would stay till after 9, and there's, like, oh, that's when, like, Krishna Club becomes Club Krishna, and, you know, they would just so that's
a good name.
It reminds me of, like, the old stories. Like, I just feel like it was, like, the place to be for that first 2 years. Krishna Club was the place to be, and there was a couple students who were really, really charismatic Krishna clubbers who would they weren't even that interested in Bhagavad Gita, but they would bring their friends, because it was, like, you know, it was a place for the hippie kids to hang out, basically, and then get this meal together. And so it was really, really lively. Krishna Club blew up at those early years. It was so exciting.
Yeah, I think what
Sounds
really
so exciting.
It was.
I would have loved to get to be there for some of the gatherings. And I've seen photos in that first episode we did. You guys did an amazing job.
And then
you change it to your house? You change it to your house, right?
Doing it twice a week. So we started doing on campus, and then also for students who were really interested to come to our house. And in the house, we would focus more on philosophy and kirtan. So there won't be, like, any hatha yoga, and we would go, like, longer discussions and going more deeper topics in Bhagavad Gita.
Mhm.
And so then we started doing twice a week, one program at home and then one program at on campus. And
we were also just experimenting with a lot of different things too. Like we did like Bhakti Breakfast Club on campus. We did Krishna Lunch to Go. We tried all kinds of stuff. We did sunrise. Oh my God, never commit to doing sunrise morning programs on the beach every single weekend.
We did
but we did meet devotees that way. We met
we did Sacred Sounds with Maya Puris. That was a big hit.
That was amazing.
When you guys
coming was epic.
Yeah, it was.
We were so proud. We were so proud. We were like, these are our people. Come and see our people. Like they come from another land. Like we can only do like the 3 beat on the kartals.
It's like, this is what real kirtan looks like.
This is it. You guys, look at what.
And I remember, like, I was like even the evening before, like I was praying, I was like, Krishna, please send at least like 40 students. I don't want like Mayapuris to come and there'll be like only 10 kids in this like big auditorium. It'll be so. But like Krishna sent like there were literally like 80 to 100 students that came.
It was popping. I remember. It was like that became Club Krishna, but that was like in the afternoon. We didn't have to wait till the nighttime.
That was an amazing.
And so, are you doing things now? Like, what about like your current situation? Like, what are you guys focusing on now? Any projects currently? Like, where is your focus right now?
So before we talk now, that transitioned into where we're living right now. We thought about buying a house, and at some point, I wanted my parents to move and live with us, and so the plan was, well, we should buy a house which has kind of like a mother-in-law suite or an apartment where my parents can stay. That way we know there'll be a place for them whenever they decide to move to US. And we started looking for a house and we found this house. And when we found it, we were like, oh, this would be something like perfect for starting like a really humble version of Krishna house, right? So there was a main house that had like 4 bedrooms on the top, a kitchen and everything downstairs. And then there were 2 apartments in the back. So both like a bedroom apartment and 2-bedroom apartment. So we're like, this will be perfect.
Krishna tricked us basically. Like we found this house and then we started thinking, suddenly we hadn't thought about it. But after we saw the house, we were like, oh, we can start a bhakti house. I mean, we hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah.
And Krishna tricked us.
And so then we asked Kalakanta Prabhu to come and take a look at the house and see what he thought. And he really liked the house, and he's like, you should definitely try to do everything in your power to get it. So then we got the house, and
for the purpose of turning it into an ashram.
Yes.
Well, and the cool thing is that we made the decision, okay, we don't want to pressure students like, hey, we're buying this house, you need to move in.
Right.
So we prayed to Krishna, like if you have students for us, we're ready. And so we had one of our home programs at our old condo, and we brought this to them, and literally 4 students came forward and said, we're ready. We're ready when you are moving with you. And we all moved.
That's a big responsibility, like a big project. That's like amazing. Wow.
We didn't.
So at the time we didn't realize, right? Like what we were like, and
that's okay.
And it wasn't, there were things that we learned. There were like really sweet parts to it. But it really like kind of reminded me, or not reminding, but kind of get a feeling of what early days would look like, right? Like what Prabhupada's disciples, this early generation did. It was just like these small things, and they will attract a few students or a few devotees, and that's kind of it grew. So it was a really wonderful experience. So we had 4 students. They were like, oh, like we're ready to move in, and we hadn't even moved in the house yet. They had already filled the application. They were already talking to us what it would look like to be in the house, what that service would look, what like their service would be, what they have to do. They were paying to rent. So that's how kind of, the we could sustain itself. There is no like, like Krishna a Krishna lunch program kind of a thing, right? So there's no income per se.
They were all UNF students. So they, we would do a morning program here together. And then, they would all commute to UNF, which is like over 20-minute
20-minute
drive because we lived downtown. And we would have, part of their stay was that, we would host programs together here. We would go out and do, they did stuff by themselves without us all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Harinam, and they
would go on Saturday morning.
wonderful.
So that's was like for a year and a half to 2 years, right? So these students stayed with us. Out of the 4, 3 of them are initiated now. A couple of them lived at Krishna House in Gainesville. So Krishna really reciprocated with our, humble efforts.
And we made mistakes. It's so humbling to be in that type of a position, and
that's how you learn, right? And you learn so much from just experimenting and going through the process.
Yeah. And living with other devotees is really, there's nothing like it. I think we learned something very unique in those situations.
Yeah.
Well,
it's so
you still keep in touch with them? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. We're still in touch with all of them. And they're friends and family for life, there's no way that we would I would not be in touch with them at all.
Fantastic. Yeah, I find it really awesome when we can find a special, you say niche or niche? I don't know what the word is.
I think it depends on American
You're
English
French,
or British.
right? You know better than we do.
Both are.
A niche in French is like a doghouse, actually.
That's what we are.
Anyways, you've managed to share Krishna consciousness in such creative ways, and you've really kind of gone out of your way to experiment and learn through the process. And it's just inspiring. I think that's so cool to kind of identify what can you do with your tools and your particular circumstances. And honestly, I'm jealous. I wish I could have been part of that experience. So I want to switch gears a little bit. One of the themes we wanted to explore with the two of you is overcoming obstacles through Krishna consciousness. As you know, our main goal for this podcast is to highlight how devotees process some of the challenges life throws at them through the spiritual lens. And we'd love to learn about what those might have been for the two of you, both as a couple and individually. So, a lot of things come to mind, obviously just married life, you come from different cultures, whatever you'd like to share. What are some of the experiences that, you've both had that ashram experience, so transitioning into many years now as a married couple with children and having to, support your family. What are some of the things also that, the realizations you might have had looking back on that ashram education that you've carried on into your life?
So I think, what?
Well, I can start, because we had all talked about, some of these challenges beforehand. So sort of relating to the timeline, there was something that was on my heart that I wanted to bring up. And that was, when I moved to Jacksonville, it was 2012. So I'd been practicing Krishna consciousness for 4 years. I'd been initiated for 2 years. So I was really quite young in the community. But I was encouraged to take on this role of chaplain at the university. So really, I was so inside, I'm saying, I'm basically a representative of ISKCON on this campus and with these students. And I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of self-doubt. It was painful for me sometimes because I was anxious about it. And I would say, I don't know why Krishna has me in this service, because it's hard for me. It's hard for me to do this. I'm very friendly, but when it comes, and I love making relationships with people, but when it comes to, giving talks or whatever, I had trouble just being myself. And so that basically letting go of, being perfect is what I'm trying to say. right? Like letting go of this like idea of what a devotee who's in my position should look like, and instead just coming forward as exactly who I am and making that my offering. And I found that I couldn't get myself to that place no matter how hard I willed it with my mind. And luckily, I was really, really encouraged by a few devotees who knew me very well. And I dove deep into recovery and therapy. So a lot of people don't know this, and you can talk to me about it more if you have questions, but I'm in recovery. I'm in 12-step recovery. I developed eating disorders when I was quite young. And it wasn't until I was actually introduced to recovery by devotees prior to me moving here, but it wasn't until then that I dove into the 12 steps, which really helps you look at the fears that feed self-seeking behavior. And once I'm able to see my fears and see where am I relying on my own self instead of relying on Krishna, or where am I relying on other people or on substances instead of Krishna, then I can begin to live one day at a time in like a vulnerable, raw, real, sweet, personal relationship with Krishna, which I never had. I was always like mystified, like I would chant japa, but my mind was spinning. And through therapy, and through this recovery, I really kind of was able to accept exactly where I'm at. And that was a long road. I mean, I'm still on it, but I feel like it saved my spiritual life. I've never sort of made a platform for this before, but I am so sure that a lot of young devotees, either born in the movement or new to the movement, we can support them in any kind of extra holistic healing that is needed to because the anartha nivritti process is intense, like when we start clearing out and Krishna's bringing up all these things in us, it can be very painful. And for me, it was almost like too much. And if I hadn't taken responsibility for my healing and been supported, the important thing is I wanted to take responsibility and I was supported in doing it.
Yeah. By devotees.
By devotees. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. By devotees who said, this is not in place of everything that Prabhupada has given us. This is not in place of the healing that comes from chanting your 16 rounds of japa and associating and hearing from, reading and listening and discussing all those things. It's in addition to. So, I think that that's something that was unique to my chaplaincy too. I was shocked how comfortable I became with that. It was nothing to be ashamed of. And over time, it became sort of a part of who I was as their chaplain, someone who could talk to them about, you're having struggles, I've struggled too. And to just be real with them about it and maybe relate to them in that way. So that's something that Lila Kishor has always, from day one, we talked about it. I told him this is an essential and extremely dear part of my life, and he has been nothing but supportive. And it is a time-consuming part of my life. I go to meetings, I have a sponsor, I talk to sponsees, things like that. So he's always been so generous about that. And what more could I ask for?
That's such an important topic that you're raising, and I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability and sharing this with us. I'm always eager to identify what the next generation of devotees can contribute, and I never look at the foundation that has been laid for us by the first generation to be deficient in any way. I think it's just a natural process of history, Vaishnava history, that we each generation get to contribute. And what you're describing, I think, is one of the key components for our movement, that this become part of our process, not just sadhana and going to the temple, but that association of devotees to go to the level of being able to discuss these things and support one another in whether it's attending 12-step programs or forming groups of devotees that can relate to a particular challenge together. And it just spiritualizes the whole thing instead of being lost and closed up in our own mind on how do I deal with this. It feels like it's, against, I'm not a good devotee because I have this issue. If we can just open up, first of all, we'll realize that so many devotees are dealing with one thing or another, and then we can support each other in those different processes. So thank you so much for sharing that. So that's a great, very wonderful example of a personal challenge that you've managed to, or that you are working through in parallel with your Krishna consciousness. Lila Kishor, what could you share with us about your personal life and what you're working through?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about, I think one of the challenges that came across as a couple to us was a few years ago, we had a couple miscarriages when we were trying to have a child. And that's another thing I think is such a taboo, especially I think for male devotees, right? I mean, there is a part that obviously, like, I think it's a lot harder from my experience emotionally for a woman to go through that experience than for a male, because it literally, they have that soul in their body, and they're already kind of associating with that soul at such a close level, which I did not get a chance to, what Amrita-Keli experienced. So we had our first miscarriage before we started the Bhakti House, and then we had our second miscarriage after we had started the Bhakti House. So that was hard, because we had all the, we were kind of in this ashram, living in an ashram, and we were with these younger students who cannot really relate to what we are
where we were
experiencing and where we are at, there and kind of what we share with them,
Right.
And we're trying to set an example because they're new to in their Krishna consciousness. So the part that was hard was trying to, I think few things that I learned. One was trying to figure out what Krishna wants from it, right? So the thought came, well, maybe Krishna doesn't want us to be parents because this is probably our life. This is happening, and these kids are coming, and Bhakti House is going really well. So maybe if we become parents now, this will put a pause to that, and Krishna doesn't want this service to stop, right? And we wanted to become parents, so that kind of made us angry towards Krishna, that Krishna is not giving us something that we want, even though it is in our mind, it is something that is service, raising children in Krishna consciousness. So
I want to interject, I'm sorry.
I'm writing this down. By the way,
I was always, I'm gonna use a bold word here, annoyed, when I heard of people being mad at God. I thought, that's so basic. Like, we know Krishna makes arrangements because he's our best friend and he loves us.
right.
So if we're angry at God, like, that just shows that, we got issues, not God. So I never really had a lot of empathy for people who would say that. This was the first time, that second miscarriage, I was actually furious. And I thought, we're giving everything we can. We're we're preaching to a degree that I feel like is sustainable for us. All we want to do is also have a child, and you keep killing our children. And I felt a lot of anger and self-pity, and so that shocked me. I was shocked by my own anger. I was shocked that I was angry at Krishna, and it was very humbling for me to be able to have that emotion. So you had a reflection on that, I know.
Yeah, so at that time, the anger was there, but the realization that came after was the anger was me trying to figure out what Krishna wants, right? Rather than just being in the moment and just, I think it's a tendency is like, oh, what lesson is Krishna trying to teach out of this, right? Like, I don't have to
overthink it already.
Right. I don't have to overanalyze, philosophize like, oh, was this soul here for, going back to Godhead, or is that, like, how does that matter, and how does that change the anger and the emotions that I'm feeling, right? And what really helped me in that experience was, at that time, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu just started coming to US. If you, I'm sure you probably know him from like his time in Alachua. So he just started coming to US, and he came to give a talk at Krishna Club, and he stayed with us a couple of times, and we spoke to him about it. And in my mind, there were a couple of things. One was I was trying to philosophize it. I was angry at Krishna that he doesn't want us to be parents. I was thinking maybe I'm making a big situation in my mind. It's as devotees, we go through obstacles, and this is like a small obstacle that maybe I'm like zooming in too much, and it's affecting me too much. I should actually just take a step back and chant my rounds, and it'll be all right, right? Not really.
Stop feeling.
Right. And again, that's a realization that I had afterwards. That's like, we are personalists, right? And being personal with Krishna means having those real emotions, having that real relationship, just like we want within devotees, among devotees, having those with Krishna.
I think if you can be mad at Krishna, you are an advanced devotee to begin with. For real.
Stop claiming that.
So then what was, so we got this opportunity to talk to Chaitanya Charan Prabhu about it at that time. So I told so we were on the way to take him to airport. He was getting on, we had to take him on his flight.
Yeah.
And I told him, like, Amrita-Keli brought up, like, Prabhu, we had this miscarriage, and I couldn't believe his expression that was on his face is still in my mind, that it was like everything else stopped for him, and he was just so concerned. And he really was just like empathizing and was like, okay, like, this is real, and this is a real, it's a real emotion. I'm sorry that you're going through this. And he was like, when Krishna spoke to Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita, after that, when the Yuddha was happening, Abhimanyu died, right? And when that happened, Krishna wasn't telling Arjuna that I just spoke Bhagavad Gita to you. Like, I just told you a few days ago that, we're spirit soul. Like, why are you lamenting about Abhimanyu? He's a spirit soul, he's back to Godhead. That's not what Krishna said. Krishna was lamenting with Arjuna. And he said, that's what Krishna wants. He is our friend. And he's like, for some reason, it is sanctioned by Krishna. We don't know why this is sanctioned by Krishna, but he's here for us. And, I am sorry that you're going through this, and I'm here for you. And what can I do? And to the point, like, he gave himself so much, like he ended up missing his flight. Like, we just like,
wow.
We literally hijacked him, and, he missed his flight.
Wow.
And that was a wonderful experience for me, is to how to be present for other devotees, right? Like no one wants to hear the philosophy when they're going through a sorrow, right? Like, no one wants to hear if they have lost
such an important point.
Like,
I've heard that over and over from devotees.
Yeah. So that was a good learning experience for me. So that taught me a lot of lessons. And another thing is, like, it is such a common thing that happens, that actually 1/4 of the pregnancy statistically are miscarriages. So it is really common to happen.
We did not know that.
And we did not know that. And I spoke to some senior devotees, and they were like, you will be surprised at like how many devotees come to me, to us to talk about it, like how common of a thing it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a hard obstacle, but it was a big learning experience and helping to how to really be personal with the devotees and how to really be personal with Krishna was what came out of it.
You mentioned something that did you want to add something to his realizations, Amrita? I cut you off.
I just wanted to say that I'm grateful that, the first time we miscarried, I did try to like philosophize. The second, and keep going. The second one, I let myself totally fall apart for even in front of the students for, thank God it was over Christmas break. So most of them were home, but one of them was here. And also Kalakanta Prabhu told him like, I'm enraged with Krishna right now. And he said to me, Krishna doesn't expect you to feel any other way right now. He doesn't expect anything from you. He understands. And that was like the key that helped me release the anger, actually.
Wow.
Knowing that Krishna can handle all of our feelings is, I feel like
that reminds me of something that Bhakti Tirtha Swami said. We know that he went through some struggles, personal health things, and towards the end of his life. But also, if you hear his pastimes of him preaching in Russia and all these amazing, like KGB Mission Impossible Sankirtan stories, it's amazing. And one of the things that he said was that anything that happens in your life, that there shouldn't be that feeling, or you should try to understand to not let that feeling take over so much of that I can't handle this. Because he said Krishna knows you maybe better than yourself. So any obstacle that comes into your life is, you can deal with it. Like you can handle it. You can embrace it. You can move forward. And Krishna knows that. And and it's so beautiful because I mean, and one thing I just wanted to reflect off of what you were saying, Lila Kishor, you were saying sometimes you don't want to philosophize when some struggle is coming. And I know you guys haven't brought it up yet, but I just learned recently that I know that right now you're battling cancer. And, that is a big battle. And the way that you're holding yourself, and I see that you're absorbed in Krishna consciousness, and it's really inspiring. And even though that maybe, and this kind of comes to a question off of what you were saying, how does that feel with going through such a life-threatening experience? You have children, you have a beautiful wife, and the whole kind of not philosophizing what's happening, but at the same time needing to in order to stay grounded and level-headed and accepting. So would you mind kind of go through the motions a little bit, express what are you going through, and how, and then of course how can we be a part of that? But first I would like to understand a little bit of your journey.
Sure. So in June, in May-June timeframe, I was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I was not surprised. Surprisingly, I was not surprised. Because I think like I was feeling that there was something wrong with my body. Like I was not feeling totally fine for past few months or over last year or so. And the feeling that honestly, the first thought that came to my mind was, if I make through this, then probably I'll be a little bit of a better devotee than I am starting through this experience. Mm-hmm. If I don't survive this, then I'm probably going to back to Godhead, or getting closer, going back to Godhead. So it's like a win-win situation, right? Like I literally don't have anything to lose, right? So, and
so you are philosophizing it a little bit.
I mean, and yeah, I mean, it wasn't really, honestly, I wasn't trying to philosophize it. It's just, I think it's the beauty of the being in Krishna consciousness for over years, right? Where you really listening to lectures and listening to philosophy, like after, listening the same thing over and over again, doing our japa, our sadhana, it does and get ingrained, in your psyche, or whatever the word is, right? It's like it becomes your second nature and
part of your thought process.
Right. Yeah. And I have seen, like, kind of what you're saying, right? Like we hear the scriptures, we see the devotees like Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj, a wonderful, such an, elevated devotee going through such a hard thing. And like, who am I, right? Like it's definitely possible to go through something like this, right? So so I wasn't trying to philosophize it. It's just being, in the movement, or reading the scriptures and listening to lectures somehow, and the mercy of the devotees and the mercy of my spiritual master, that it was ingrained that that it seemed like a win-win situation. Like I didn't have any fear. I did not have a fear, or don't have a fear of death. I felt the first thought that came to my mind was like, okay, what about my family? I think it's easier for the person going through it than the people around them. So the thought was, well, it's easy for me, because if I'm not feeling well, I can just be in the bed and chant my japa, or, just say, hey, I cannot take care of the kids, or I cannot, do this. But it would be harder for Amrita-Keli, because, it's a lot more responsibility for her. Like, she has to take care of a sick husband and the kids and do her part that she has to do. And so that was the thought that came, was like, how Amrita-Keli will kind of deal with that. There was no fear of death. We talked about what would it like if I don't make it, then what's the plan for Amrita-Keli and the kids? So
yeah, we talked about that, like, in the very beginning. We had a long talk about it. Like, what would my life look like after he passed? I feel like that was really helpful for us, sort of acknowledging that reality, and then being able to be present today. Is like, we've already discussed that, we've already talked about finances and things like that, so we can sort of focus on what's important today.
That's amazing. What a great way to plan this event, and how you're living it, and just kind of being accountable on all sides.
So sorry,
go ahead. No, please.
So yeah, so like we talked about, like, like Amrita-Keli would move to Alachua. She'll have a better support system with devotees over there. And then after that, it was just, how can I try to focus more on, like, what should I be doing? How can I focus more on spiritually? And then during that time, I also had the realization of, like, how strong Maya is actually. Like, this is one of my realization that I have had, now that, like, progressing through it, they're literally like, one thing actually, before I go to that point, is one thing is, it's been a blessing. It's like, I hear, like, after getting chemo and I'm really tired and really exhausted, it's so easy to surrender. It's like, it's just like, I feel like, in a 90-year-old body, I don't want anything but just my japa bag in my bed. And it's just so easy to just focus on it, so it's just, in that way, such a blessing. And when and if I get cured, I would actually miss those days like that, even though I'm in pain, but it's just like my mind is just so like surrendered to Krishna, which rarely happens. And so it's such a blessing in that way, that it's such a great experience. It's been and then going back to what I was saying about Maya, and then there are days that I'm feeling good, and it's just so easy to forget about those experiences. And here I'm, like taking shelter of Netflix, and seeing that, and it's just, and that had like gave me the realization, like I'm literally like a person who might be dying in a few months, and I can understand like how, like what Prabhupada meant when he would say, like you Western boys and girls are not scared enough of Maya. Like what that statement really meant, was the realization that I have this thing, which I can get cured, but I may not survive. Yet, the days I'm feeling good, it's easy for me to, forget about my death or my spiritual life, and take shelters of other things.
Yeah, then that verse in Bhagavad Gita kind of makes sense, that those looking for God or those in despair, the inquisitive, wanting the money, like that. So it's like we can see in our lives sometimes we're suffering, then it's easy to like, oh, Nrsingadev or Krishna, or to yeah. Wow, those are some really deep realizations, Prabhu. I mean, and the way that you're kind of just embracing it and going through it, and then the support system that you have with Amrita, and you guys being very transparent, talking about the worst case scenario already in the beginning. And I mean, all of that is just kind of like a smack to my face, in the sense of like reality, like, I mean, I lost my mother. I did see, like at a younger age, I did see, somebody dwindling in front of my eyes, but then it's so easy to just forget, like you said, Maya is so strong. And then, having this conversation with both of you is just so heart opening and mind opening, and, really kind of where are we putting our attention, our intention, and our focus.
Yeah. And I think one thing this experience that has shown me is a lot more gratitude for Krishna consciousness and what Prabhupada has given us. Because when I go, to get my chemo, there are people who are literally like, there's so much fear of death, there's fear of like needles. Like there's one patient that they have to give this seducing drug to where she has to pass out because she cannot go through the chemo. She's really anxious about the whole experience. And so they like the first drug they gave her is just to seduce her, and she's basically sleeping through the whole experience. And like I think about like what the experience would be for me if it wasn't for Krishna consciousness. It's such an anchor and like a grounding thing for me at the time to be able to have something like that, right? Like if not knowing like, okay, what is that like, what's having all those fears that one may have, but being, in mercy and of the devotees and association of the devotees that I've been so blessed with over the years, that those fears aren't there, so it's definitely have given me a lot more gratitude for what we have.
Amazing. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that experience with us. Is there anything that we can do for you as a community? I mean, I just want to shower you with love and prayers from all the devotees, and I'm sure you're getting it already, but please let us know if we can be of any help to you too, as you're going through this.
We already feel you got
Yeah, we feel loved and held. I mean, he's, me, like I would be on Facebook going like, I have cancer, can you please pray for me? He's very private. It's not like that in this case. And so, I respect that, and I'm not posting about his cancer either. But so I just want to say something that I'm really inspired by is, he was asked this by the Krishna house, what can we do to support you? And he said, I would like to give class every once in a while, if that's all right. And which I just thought was so cool, because like that's the last thing that I would come up with. Like someone was asking me how they can support me. They're like, oh, make me give class, but that's been so wonderful to like be a part of that, of him like reading the verses and thinking about what he's going to say and talking about it. And, it gets the old juices flowing. That
so exemplary. I mean, I'm just so inspired by how you guys are processing this. I mean, really amazing. It's like I don't want to call you, I don't want to compare you to Marsh Parikshit because we want you to stay. but that you would do that, and you're actually in such a great position, to speak from your current situation. That just gives so much potency to whatever you might share with devotees. So I really want to go check out your classes.
Yeah, no, and to add to that, not only go and check out your classes, honestly, I feel like we just started our conversation. I think we can easily go another hour. I'm only mentioning the time because you said you have to stop at 6:30. It happens to be 6:30 now, but there were other things that actually I wanted to bring up to ask you about, relationship and making it work with different cultures. I've exploring that and everything like that, and but time is short, and yeah, I don't know. Amrita or Lila Kishor Amrita, do you guys want to?
Are there any parting words that you'd like to share with us before we close? We really want to give you the benefit of the platform. Anything you want to share with our listeners before we go?
I do want to share that in my last PET scan, they did not find any cancer cells. So the prayers of the devotees.
Aye. That's amazing.
So, it's again, the prayers of the devotees and the blessings of the Vaishnavas are really powerful. I strongly feel that, and, I have felt all the blessings and prayers throughout my experience and throughout my journey. And the only thing I want to depart with is just, just I can, one, like being real with one another, really supporting one another. It is because we all have our challenges. I mean, every time I'm speaking to a certain devotee, I was actually talking to a devotee friend of ours last week, and I was talking through them like what they are going through and what they have been through, and it literally felt like what I'm going through is just like, a little sneeze, in front of like what they have gone through or what they are going through. So just really trying to be there for one another, because it is, material life is hard. We have challenges that will keep coming. They won't stop, right? Like I'm sure there'll be another one coming in some time that we'll be talking about, in next time. So that's
we could have another episode if you want.
So that's not going to change. But what has really, the reason that we have been able to grow through it is because of the Devotees Association, because of the devotees being there for us and really, caring for us and having those relationships. So I think it's really important to cultivate those relationships, have those like Sangha, and have that friendship to where, you can kind of go to and talk to in difficult times, and you can really be yourself,
Yeah.
That's true. Like the best demonstration of toughness is being kind. Right? Like it's so difficult. It's so easy to kind of be consumed in one's own world, not be empathetic, not this, and it's to be kind maybe not the easiest thing. And I think that's what you're saying is kind of, if we can be understanding, reach out, be there for one another, be real, listen, be communicative, try to be transparent. Like all of those things, they're not easy things to do, but they're super important and helpful, especially if you're going through something. And like you said, sometimes you don't know, but anybody could be going through something and we don't know. Either they're not telling, or maybe they're going through something else in a different way that is maybe just as agonizing than someone who is, just say, battling cancer, who's a self-realized soul like you and who can just kind of, you know, gather it and take it like this and be like, yeah, it's part of the thing. And like, and then somebody who's going through a smaller scale issue can be so consuming for them, but doesn't mean that it's a lessened experience. It just, you know, because maybe that level of realization, it's a very effective, you know, experience in their life. And to try to be empathetic in any issue, big or small. Yeah, thank you for that.
Amrita-Keli, did you have any final words for us as well?
I do. Okay. You asked about how we manage our differences, and we just discovered couples therapy, and we love it so much. So if you've got differences, which I think we all have differences in our own ways. Oh my gosh, just been, if you find the right therapist, we have a devotee therapist, which is like an extra special, he's plugging the computer in treat. It's just been an incredible journey, like blows my mind, like what we've accomplished together since we started that. And then the other thing is, my last thought is, you know, like, you know, our preaching has completely wrapped up, like because of COVID and now the kids. We're not doing anything outreach wise. We're raising a family. And so it has been a huge experience for me to learn that we're not defined by what we do, but I think what the mission is like how we do it. Where did you go? Sorry, go ahead. Or like, yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the reasons why, you know, we're, I don't know. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm in this position, is that I'm to learn that I have a lot of work to do right here. I have a lot of, I have the whole, see, what I realize is if I reach out so far, then maybe I'm avoiding the work that's to be done here. And I think that was a lesson that I needed to learn. You know,
in reach and outreach, they work interchangeably. They support one another.
They do. And so this is, I feel like this is a time that Krishna is telling me, like, nest and build yourself there. You know, our children are young. I needed to work on that. So he's given me no more flex. Like I don't have any choice. Like he's saying, he's putting me in position to just work on that. And it's a huge gift too, in that way. And I'll just say, like, I have responded more emotionally than he has to the situation.
I'm not surprised.
Like shock, you know, this, that, desperation.
I'm sure. I mean, it's probably as difficult for you as for Lila Kishor. I mean, in your own ways, you're going through this, and I can really appreciate the gravity of the situation. And I'm just so inspired by how you're handling it, how you're processing it, how you're able to share it with us. It's really a beautiful example for all of us. And I've gotten so much out of this talk. One of my great takeaways is that, you know, Krishna was not giving you what you wanted, but you've learned to understand and try to look into what does Krishna want for you. And that's a really beautiful lesson that I think we can all really take with us, and yeah, focus on the current situation and see where does Krishna lie in these current life situations, and just focus on that. You know, we all have great aspirations as devotees, but it's important to really identify what does Krishna really want us to focus on in this particular moment. So we'll close it up here. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us. Kish, you did an amazing job. I think you're giving me a run for my money. I'm so grateful we have you as an interviewer with us. Thank you so much for your contributions. Our next episode is going to be with Sharanagati, so you can look forward to that coming up soon. And we look forward to having everybody back on Nectar Talks. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, and you know, I was supposed to mention a takeaways thing, but one thing that I did take away from this is that you guys are amazing. Lila Kishor and Amrita-Keli, you guys are awesome.
Really, definitely. Haribol.
Krishna.
Haribol.
All right.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Hare